Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all on a Saturday morning. um, so I had agreed to speak at this conference on some children's fiction for the broad general education, for the S1 to 3 part of the secondary curriculum. The Education Committee have felt for a little while that we had devoted most of our energies to the years 4 to 6, and that the younger pupils were getting a bit of a short shrift. So we decided that we would try to make a focus on that for this particular conference. My job was to select some books that I felt were suitable for the early years in secondary school. And partly my problem was that we're actually spoiled for choice at the moment. The range of young adult fiction by Scottish writers or with Scottish settings is actually extraordinary at the moment, and many of them are indeed world leading and having quite serious impact. So I chose 3, and then of course when I began to work on them, you know what happens when you start to see things and things. I could have done the talk on one book alone and still not had enough time. So as usual, this is going to be a whistle-stop tour around the 3 books, but I'm hopeful that you'll have a sense of the potential of all of these texts for use in the classroom. So I've chosen 3 contrasting books. I've chosen Claire McFall's Ferryman, published in 2013, Joan Lennon's Silver Skin, published in 2015, and Elizabeth Laird's Welcome to Nowhere, published in 2017. All 3 of the books have either won or been nominated for major book awards. Ferryman won the Older Readers category of the Scottish Children's Book Awards, was longlisted for the UKLA Book Award and the Branford Bowes Award, and was nominated for the Carnegie Medal. Silver Skin was shortlisted for the Scottish Teenage Book Prize, and Welcome to Nowhere was shortlisted for the same prize and won the UKLA Book Award. Now, superficially, these books have nothing in common. One has at its centre a reimagining of a Greek mythological figure, Charon, the ferryman of Hades, who carries the souls of the newly deceased across the River Styx to the land of the dead. But these events take place in contemporary Scotland and involve a 15-year-old girl and her ferryman, Tristan. The next is a modern, almost sci-fi take on the Selkie legend, set in a Scotland far in the future. This is a time-slip novel that takes us back to Scotland in Neolithic times by way of Victorian times and involves time travel, Scottish mythology and climate change. The third novel is about the war in Syria and its effects on one family and their loss of home and identity. To a certain extent, all of these books could be considered Bildungsroman, novels that deal with the maturation process, with the how and the why the protagonists develop as they do morally and psychologically. The German word means novel of education or novel of formation, and I would argue that probably all of these novels have some of those aspects. The Scottishness of each of the book varies. Claire McFall is a native Scot and until very recently was an English teacher in the Borders. Joan Lennon was born in Canada but has lived in Scotland for over 40 years. And Elizabeth Laird is a New Zealander and Scottish, rather in the way like rugby players are. Her parents are Scottish, so but she now divides her time between London and Edinburgh. 2 of the books have very clear Scottish settings and 1 does not. So I'm going to start with Ferryman. And as you'll see, published in 2013, it's the first book in a trilogy, the second of which is Trespassers, published in 2017, and Outcast, just published this year. Claire McFall is thrilled to bits because her book has now been optioned by a really big Hollywood company called Legendary Entertainment, and it's to be adapted and directed by the actress and author and BAFTA award winner Kelly Marcel. Now, can I tell you a little bit about the film? It's quite interesting. This book is a huge bestseller in China. It's been in the top 10 of not children's book, but top 10 bestsellers since it was published. She sold over 3 million copies of this book. It is like she's a rock star in China. So when they're making the film, they're making 2 versions. They're making an English language version and a Chinese version. So it's a fascinating thing for this. It delves into 2 great unknowns of love and death, and it's based on the Greek mythology of Charon, the ferryman of Hades, who carries the souls of the newly deceased across the river Styx and Acheron that divided the world of the living and the dead. So in this book, a young girl called Dylan emerges unscathed from the debris of an horrific train crash in Scotland, only to learn that she is in fact the only fatality. The bleak landscape around her isn't Scotland. It's a wasteland haunted by wraiths searching for human souls. And the stranger waiting for her isn't an ordinary boy. Tristan is a ferryman, trusted with transporting her soul safely to the afterlife, a journey he's made thousands of times before. But this time is different. This is a beautifully written, touching, funny, sometimes harrowing novel about first love, set in the mythologically and philosophically fruitful territory between life and death. This is a journey in both literal and a figurative sense. Both the main characters, Tristan and Dylan, make personal journeys in terms of their maturation and their emotions. The irony of this, of course, is that Tristan, though he looks like a teenage boy, is in fact much older than he looks. He exists out of time and in a place of little choice. The discovery that she is dead has a strange effect on Dylan. She is apparently accepting of her death, but her perception of the liminal space of the wasteland is far beyond what Tristan expects. And it's her behaviour and vision that brings about the changes in Tristan himself. McFall creates a setting that is demanding of the reader. The characters exist in the wasteland. Dylan is dead, yet experiences pain and hunger, cold and fear. She shouldn't be feeling these things. They're habit, she's told. But the fact they persist and seem to be affecting Tristan becomes important. The strength of Ferryman is the world McFall creates. It manages to be both empty and oppressive. From the site of the train crash where Dylan suddenly finds herself adrift from concrete form, meaning and adult supervision, to the underworld to which she and Tristan descend. The notion that Dylan's mood and memories dictate the form the underworld takes is an interesting device that McFall uses well to expand her creative palette beyond the clichés of fiction set in liminal spaces, purgatory or limbo. Because the setting of the story constantly changes because of the protagonist's feelings, the environment becomes the litmus test for Dylan's burgeoning relationship with Tristan. It's a new and interesting take on a particular brand of young infatuation. McFall was nervous of stepping on religion's toes with this topic, but she didn't want a religious book. However, she questioned how it could be possible to write about an afterlife that doesn't tap into any of the religious ideas we have. And as a class teacher, I think that's one of the big things that would be featuring in my preparation of this material. This is a book that explores ideas of deception and expediency, the non-human turn, belonging and identity, abandonment and sacrifice. The language is at times lyrical and at others savage and raw. The play on the senses is at the forefront at all times and lends itself extremely well to that old, do you remember that 5 to 14 term knowledge of writer's craft? I miss that, I have to say. But it really does lend itself to that in terms of looking at exploring this book in terms of what it's able to do. It's also a book that is redolent with contemporary references that situate the book in Scotland in the present day, from the Iron Brew references to the pages that show text messages in the printed copy. There are also many intertextual references, from Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven and the Powell and Pressburger film A Matter of Life and Death, a film that really has to be used with this book, I assure you. The guidance for the broad general education is that it can span a number of curriculum areas. The books that have been selected for this presentation all lend themselves to this. Here, in this book, we could be looking at mythology, RME, psychology and philosophy, as well as close reading and evaluation. It's a book that does well for almost like multiple readings, multiple close readings, and it's a book that I think will engage both girls and boys, which is always one of the things that's at the back of your mind. I think you'll see there'll be kind of references, that contemporary references to films and to other young adult fiction that the kids will probably relate to extremely well. In the same way, Joan Lennon's Silver Skin takes a very contemporary view of the Selkie story. So this one published in 2015. This, although Joan is a prolific young Scottish writer for children, this was actually her first young adult book and was nominated for the Scottish Children's Teen Book Prize right out of the gate, which has to say something about it. It's a time-slip novel set variously in Orkney in 1850, the age of the Alexander Decision, Tower Stack 367 to 74, level 56, Delta Grid, Northwest Europasia, and the late Stone Age, Bay of Scale, Orkney. It's set very much in the future time. We're not entirely sure how far in the future. It's narrated from various points of view. Rab, the time traveller from the future, Kate, the refugee on Orkney in Neolithic times, and Voy, the wise woman and healer. And Lennon herself describes it as a sci-fi historical adventure romance. So it's a mixed genre novel. So this is a time-slip story set far in a highly technological future in which artificial intelligence guides and supports human beings, in which races have blended, and in which space is the premium currency. Rab, one of the main protagonists, is black. He's from a future where, and I quote, "Human colouring and characteristics have been jumbled together for so long that any couple could produce a child of any appearance. Nobody stuck out because everybody looked different," end quote. Rab dons the retro-dimensional time wender with full cloaking capability, the Silver Skin, in order to undertake historical research. The prize for such original work is achieving a living space of his own. The second skin creates a seal with the wearer's own skin, drawing energy from their own electrical field. What's unusual about this form of time travel, though, is that the traveller's position remains static and that the time passes around them. The suit is fitted with a comm, an AI which teaches, medicates, navigates, and all sorts of other things. Rab decides to explore Victorian archaeology and is inspired to visit Orkney in 1850, since his tower block is hundreds of metres above where the Orkney Islands used to be. It's also the time when a major storm uncovered the Neolithic village of Karabrae. Karabrae is a stone-built Neolithic settlement located on the Bay of Scale on the west coast of mainland, the largest island of the Orkney Islands. Consisting of 8 clustered houses, it was occupied from roughly 3180 BC to about 2500 BC, and is Europe's most complete Neolithic village. Traditionally, Karabrae is said to have been discovered in 1850 when an enormous storm struck Orkney and dispersed the sand and soil which had buried the site. It's this major storm that impacts on Rab's journey, pulling him out of the correct time loop and destination and injuring him seriously. Rather than landing in 1850 as planned, Rab arrives in Neolithic Orkney at the end of the Stone Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. It's also a time of major climate change. Rab's world too has been shaped by climate change. This is a hugely strong theme in the book, and given the current young people's involvement in climate change demonstrations, it seems incredibly apposite to be used in this particular for this particular setting. The novel explores how someone from a highly technological future can cope in a Neolithic world where there are huge differences in experience, culture, and understanding that must be transcended. It's original, imaginative, beautifully written, mixing science and the supernatural to great effect and channeling Selkie mythology through a sci-fi lens. It is a mesmeric tale rising and falling between different narrators, voices and points of view, and examining our relationship between the environment and catastrophe. Kate, one of the other main protagonists, is the apprentice to Karabrae's wise woman, Voi. She is the one who's there when the mysterious creature wearing a silver skin emerges from the sea and promptly bursts into flames. She's the one who nurses him back to health. And I have to say, a bit like Star Trek's Prime Directive, there's not supposed to be any contact between the time traveller and society, but clearly with the malfunction of the suit and the exploding into flames, that can't happen. So there's the connection between Rab and the rest of the society. Voi, the wise woman, believes that Rab is a Selkie, a supernatural creature, part seal, part human, and that he holds the key to saving Karabrae, under threat from climate change with its failing sunshine and vicious storms. The story is set in the weeks leading up to the end of its occupation. What happened? Did Karabrae's people abandon it? Was there an extreme weather event? We don't know for sure. But Lennon gives us a credible interpretation. Rab and the villagers must fight for their survival. The end of this book is like the end of Ferryman, vaguely unsatisfactory, leaving almost more questions than answers, and absolutely inviting speculation. Lends itself to some really interesting, creative, imaginative responses, What is the next story? Does Rab make it? What's left for the islanders? And so on. Like the previous book, it lends itself to cross-curricular opportunities in the study of history, geography, climate change, myth and legend, and excellent opportunities for research skills and imaginative responses. Intertextual references to many Selkie stories abound, and the setting in both time and place is also used by Kathleen Fiddler in her book The Boy with the Bronze Axe. And it also might be, I don't know if any of you know the story, but there's a Kurt Vonnegut story published in 1953 called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is entirely about overcrowding and overpopulation and the creation of a drug called anti-gerasone, which makes people live to absolutely ridiculous ages and also contributes to overcrowding and space issues. And that's one that I think would again work well with this book in conjunction. Welcome to Nowhere is a powerfully written story about the life of one family caught up in a civil war by the award-winning author Elizabeth Laird. It's about the civil war that started in Syria in March 2011. Laird has lived all over the world. She's lived in Africa, she's lived in various different places, but she also lived for a time in Lebanon during the period of their civil war. And she saw and was particularly moved by the effect of civil war on families and on family relationships. When she and a friend were watching some news coverage of the Syrian refugees landing, and we all know how harrowing some of that filming was, she was moved to ask, what can I do? What can we do? And her friend said, you can write about it. That's a way to bring it to attention of the world. But she found that quite a difficult thing to do. And there's a really good interview with her, with another writer, where she talks about the whole thing, and it's a very current contemporary issue among writers at the moment. You know, how could she, as a white British older woman, write about the experience of being a refugee in Syria? And had she the right to write about it? And I think that is something that is a big area of discussion in children and young adults literature at the moment. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let me go back to... So she took the opportunity to do something about that. So let me go on and I'll tell you about that in a second. So basically, 12-year-old Omar and his brothers and sisters were born and raised in the beautiful and bustling city of Bosra in Syria. Omar does not care about politics. All he wants is to grow up to become a successful businessman who will take the world by storm. But when his clever older brother Musa gets mixed up with some young political activists, everything changes. Before long, bombs are falling, people are dying, and Omar and his family have no choice but to flee their home with only what they can carry. Yet no matter how far they run, the shadow of war follows them, until they have no other choice than to attempt the dangerous journey to escape their homeland altogether. But where do you go when you can't go home? This story takes place over a period of 3 years and shows the consequences of civil war and the impact on families. The family consists of the parents and 5 children. Eman, 15 at the start of the book, Musa, 13 and a half, and suffering from cerebral palsy, Omar, who's 12, Vaud, who's 5, and Nadia, who's 1.5. In the course of this first-person narrated book, well-rounded characters are presented, along with universal themes such as courage, endurance, forgiveness and love. As well as these, more challenging issues emerge to do with gender and education, political activism, terrorism, bullying, stereotyping, identity, family power struggles, and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Ethical dilemmas also play a key role in this novel, in which the plot faithfully follows the truth of the start of the war, which I must confess I did not know, when some schoolboys in the southern city of Daraa wrote a slogan on the wall of their school. It read, "The people want the regime to change." The authorities reacted with extreme severity. The boys were arrested and tortured in prison. This in turn enraged many people, leading to marches and demonstrations, causing the government to respond with bullets and arrests until the country was engulfed in civil war that has consequences up to the present day. This is a difficult read in terms of subject matter. Fiction for young people can be more focused and direct, and is often able to get to the heart of pressing but contentious issues better than adult fiction. This refugee novel is one such text. Omar's father has a government job and takes their side in all things. Eman is a clever and pretty girl, desperate for an education, but is vulnerable in the unstable situation and subject to her parents' choice with regard to marriage, which they see as inevitable and desirable. Musa has cerebral palsy, with both physical disabilities and communication difficulties, but he's extremely bright, something that takes time to emerge in school. He's mercilessly bullied at school and even judged badly and to his face by family members, including his grandmother. He is the one who represents the rebels' position and gets involved with subversive plots that ultimately bring about the family's downfall. The role of news and communication and technology are key to this story and present a wonderful opportunity to explore the topic of fake news and critical literacy with capable classes. Obviously, though, some sensitivity is needed in deciding to use this book, given its focus on refugees and asylum seekers, and the religious and cultural aspects of the book. The diverse population in Scotland's schools these days means that there may be new arrivals in your classes, and care must be taken in introducing and contextualising such materials. But that's not a reason not to use it. This book is also one probably for more dedicated readers, because the complexity of the Syrian situation has to be explained for the story to make sense. It's a pretty dark novel that does not pull punches in its descriptions of bombings, the injuries, the living conditions, and the journey to Jordan, as well as the privations of refugee camps. Ethical and moral questions emerge here too. Musa uses a mobile phone to film the riots and massacres with the intention of publicising the events. So he does this in the knowledge that he might be caught, and he has mobility issues. He's filming torture, death, shootings and killings without intervening in order to get the film out. So there's a big ethical question around that. There's issues of invasions of privacy, with governments able to tap phones and computers to track rebels. There's the forced conscription of teenage boys to the army. There's the issue of arranged marriages. There's the loss of identity of the refugees, who are not seen as individuals, as people. There's family disintegration. There's mortality of family members. There are possibilities for in-depth study on many topics and for reflective and critical reading. The family are eventually granted asylum in Britain, but only after Nadia almost dies and is diagnosed with heart disease, and also after the father of the family has been killed after he returns to Syria. Laird has talked about the need for novelists to write about the great stories of our time, and clearly she believes this is one of them. The resolution in the story as she presents it is not without its challenges. The future for the family, even though they are going to Britain, is bleak. For this family, it's not a wonderful dream to come to Britain, but rather the lesser of evils. They have no idea what the future will hold, if it will be better than the camp in Jordan. They're scared of our culture, are worried about racism and Islamophobia. Laird leaves the reader with questions about what will happen to the characters when they arrive in Britain, and suggests to the reader that the answers to the question lies with them. She challenges us, reminding us that 2 generations ago, by the end of World War II, countless millions of Europeans had been forced to flee their homes. She says, quote, "We honour the memory of those who helped them escape from the misery of war and settle in new places. How will history view us and our treatment of today's refugees?" The novels discussed here are rich and varied and lend themselves to cross-cultural learning and deep and challenging tasks and responses. All of them are rooted in a strong, purposeful Scottish context, whether in setting or authorship. All can stand among the best of materials and provide meaningful learning opportunities for learners from 1st to 3rd year. Thank you.